Statistically speaking, Everest now is safer than it was before. If you aggregate all of the death and all of the successful summits of Mount Everest, 1 in 8 people die climbing Mount Everest. However, the majority of deaths have occurred in the 40s and 50s, when they were first trying to climb the mountain, when they successfully climbed in the early 50s. And the majority of successes have occurred in the 1990s and 2000s. That's mostly because of innovation. Innovation like satellite imagery that allows us to pick the best routes up these mountains, and innovations with regard to clothing, innovations with regard to evacuation services like high-altitude helicopters that can rescue you up to 20,000 feet. I think of those three, the most important has been the innovation of personal gear. And of those, I think the most important innovation has been Gore-Tex. You wear typically a base layer that covers your entire body, long underwear and a long upper. Then you would wear a fleece on top of that, and then on top of that a shell to block the wind. The fleece does the majority of your insulating, the base layer does the majority of your sweat transfer and heat transfer, and the shell blocks all of that from the wind. It's very difficult to keep warm if the wind is wicking heat off you constantly. Now, as it gets colder, what you do with that tri-layer system is you just add more base layers. So in addition to keeping warm, you also have to deal with the fact that the grade on these mountains is extraordinarily steep. For that, we have axes, specialized boots to allow you to grip better in the snow, and crampons that attach to those boots. Crampons are steel spikes, 15 spikes that clamp onto your boots just like a ski would. They're fairly lightweight, and they're very sharp. They allow you to walk up vertical ice, and they allow you also to feel comfortable walking up steep grades of snow. None of the gear that you wear on your feet is gear that you would wear anywhere else. It's nothing resembling ski boots or any kind of boots that you'd wear even in cold winter conditions, unless you were on a mountain. The boots are called double plastic boots. They're comprised of an inner boot that's very similar to a hiking boot. It's a pretty stiff inner boot. On the outside, it's a very rigid, an unbendable steel plastic boot. When you think of technical gear, nothing is more technical than that which you carry on your harness. So your harness straps around your waist, and then it also has 2 leg loops that go around your legs as well. The majority of the reason why you have the leg loops is if you're inverted, they won't fall off that way. We often also use what's called an ice screw, which is a massive screw of varying length between 6 inches and 12 inches. It's about 1 inch in diameter, and you physically screw it into the ice and it forms an anchor. Unlike the majority of rope that you would use around the house, which when you pull it, there's absolutely no flex, mountaineering rope has quite a bit of give to it. It's not elastic, but it has quite a bit of give. So if you fall on it, it's not going to produce a jerk to the person who's trying to save your life up top, nor is it going to produce a jerk to you, which might break your back. If you've got a 40-pound backpack on or a 60-pound backpack on, being jerked at the end of a rope after falling through a crevasse can break your back. So this little bit of give in the rope will save your life. We have a variety of ascenders that attach onto the rope that can pull you up the rope, but won't allow you to fall down it. They only move in one direction. You have the carabiners themselves, which can be used to create pulleys. In general, we've opted to pick items that are extraordinarily durable, like our Arc'teryx backpack. It's called a Bora 95. It's one of the heaviest backpacks out there, but it's absolutely overbuilt. It's built like a seatbelt. There's nothing that's going to go wrong with this backpack. If any of us here were to be brought to the top of Mount Everest, we would be unconscious within 4 hours. That's because our body hasn't acclimatized to the thinness of the air. For that reason, oxygen is crucial. There are some people that have climbed Mount Everest without oxygen, but those are people that have done the mountain numerous times before, and they actually suffer permanent brain damage from having done so. So I'll be climbing Mount Everest with oxygen. The oxygen tanks itself are comprised of fairly similar items, just like a scuba tank would have, except for it's much, much lighter than a scuba tank. The walls of the tank are made of titanium, and they're extraordinarily thin, and they have to be purchased in Russia because American authorities will not allow you to build tanks with walls this thin because they're prone to leakage and eventually explosion. Other mountains, we typically bring a satellite phone. There's 2 major providers of that, Iridium and Globalstar, and they work pretty well. They're about $1 a minute. So you usually only use it in emergency situations, or after summit day you might call 1 or 2 loved ones and brag and tell them that you're alive. But typically they're only used to get satellite imagery, which are downloaded to a computer. That's typically what we use them for at base camp. We'll connect the satellite phone to a computer and get a satellite imagery of the clouds in the area so that we can predict what the next 6 days are going to look like, so we know when our best window of opportunity is. Everest is very different. On Everest, we're bringing an array of communication devices, multiple sat phones in case one of the satellites from one of the providers goes down and we have to switch to a different provider. We're also bringing a lot of solar equipment to charge all of these devices. In addition, we're bringing several computers, both to store images from cameras, and we'll be there for 2 months. It's difficult to have a chip that large, so we're going to be downloading the images to the computer. The computer will also be used for communication with weather stations, with other guiding troops around the mountain, even on the northern side from China. On the mountain itself, we use Motorola handheld walkie-talkies. I'm 27 years old. I'm 6'3", and I weigh about 200 pounds right now. When I go to Everest, I'll weigh about 210. I'll put on about 10 pounds between now and next week when I leave. That 10 pounds is a nice buffer to keep me warm, and also to anticipate the fact that I'm going to lose a lot of weight when I'm up there. Despite the fact that when you're on the mountains and you're climbing up at high altitude, the only thing that you have any hunger for is basically chocolate. So you eat a lot of M&Ms and a lot of Snicker bars, in my case anyway. Despite the fact that you're eating all these extraordinarily fattening items, I usually come back from mountains at about 180. That's generally where I come back. So I lose 30 pounds, which isn't uncommon really. It's pretty common for people to lose about that amount of weight.